This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism. I am here with you today with my husband and Josh's dad, Dave.
Hello there.
Josh isn't with us today because what we're talking about is stuff that I just don't want to talk about in front of him. It's just that simple. So it's a tough subject today, but there have been some things that have come up in the family recently, and it really kind of set me off. And I've had Josh's lifetime of it anyway, since he's been diagnosed. And what I'm talking about is the people that are judgmental and sometimes hateful. And sometimes you think, well, you're out in, it's like if your kid, any mom or dad that have experienced this know what I'm talking about. Like your kid has a temper tantrum. You're out in public. They're showing their butts, as Nana would say. They're showing their butts, and then people start looking at you, like as their parent. Like, can't you control that? And the answer is no.
and stop judging me.
I can't, and stop judging me. Yeah, exactly. So there's this thing that happens too when you have a child that's on the spectrum. Then it kind of morphs into this thing where you don't just have a kid, you have a kid with special needs. And then that brings with it a whole bunch of different people and organizations and entities that help you to get through that and help them to get through that. And, you begin to see that, your kid's an individual. They need some extra support, just like the other kids in your family. And whether they're your kids or nieces and nephews or whatever it is. But it's different. And the thing that... So we acknowledge that, right?
We do.
We have different challenges with Josh than we do his sister Bug. It's just the way it is. It's the way that it's always been.
And even if the challenge is the same, the approach needs to be different, or the things that we allow need to be different because of what he can do. Right.
So for example, Bug, it's easy to tell her, oh, we were going to do that, now we're going to do this. Last minute change, this is what's going to happen. With him, that's catastrophe. You've got to give him, you got to give him a heads up. You have to give him time to adjust to the change.
Right.
Now sometimes it can't be like that. Sometimes, yes, it's a sudden change. And then you have to be prepared for him having a hard time maneuvering through that. Now, he's had a lifetime of training, therapies, real-time interventions, so he's gotten much, much better at that. But look, there was once upon a time, you remember, any variation in what he thought was going to come would create this huge shutdown. Mm-hmm. And sometimes tantrums, and just, he would not be able to deal with that. So,
and people seeing that.
Yes. And once upon a time, I don't know how you feel, but as a young woman, so I don't know what it's like to be a young man, but as a young woman, when Josh was born, I was still trying to find my way. I was trying to figure out who I was, and, everybody knew, everybody said like I was sassy, I was opinionated, I don't take stuff from people, but at the same time, they kind of voted me most likely to leave my baby at the grocery store.
Right.
Because I was like what they called a flake. So, so there was that, but I still would like, how do you do things? How do you fit in? What do you stand for? When do you back off? What do you do about the judgments of other people? And, all that's natural, I think, being a woman. I'm in my 50s now. The difference now versus then is that you might have just thought when I was younger I didn't take a bunch of crap from people. Mm-hmm. That's definitely true when it came to Josh. But there's one part that always threw me my whole life until I got to my 50s. And the wonderful thing that happens to women when you're in your 50s is you don't put up with stuff. You don't like it? Don't look. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just that's like, at this point, life is short. So, but there is something that really, really got to me the other day, and I wanted to talk to you about this. And I feel like it's important for people to hear, but I don't want Josh here with us. Mm-hmm. And that is that his whole life, what we've had to deal with are particular family members that were judgmental and sometimes rude and inconsiderate when it came to Josh and Josh's capabilities and his behaviors and the way that he presented himself.
Right.
And so, regardless of whether, whatever we call it, Josh presents himself in a way that's different than anybody else in the family presents themselves until Connor came along. Mm-hmm. And now we see a lot of those things in Connor as well. But the other day, Josh's sister Bug was talking to your dad, who is called Grandpop. And he made her so angry, and then when she passed it on to me, I'm angry, because what he said to her was that, yeah, your parents must be so disappointed in how your brother turned out. And gotta remember, that Bug grew up with Josh. She grew up protecting him. And I'm proud of her. She went right back at Grandpa and said, you don't even know him. You don't know. He is not living at home right now. And he has got a job at a library that is his dream job, and he's doing excellent at that. Mm-hmm. And she kind of, basically, the way she described it to me is she went right back at him, and he kind of, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. Well, the fact is that your dad has been one of those people that's been critical of Josh ever since he got here. Mm. And there's just, I don't know if it's generational or what it is, but I have to tell you that I am always surprised when family members treat Josh less than just because he doesn't behave like them. Mm-hmm. There's just because what? He doesn't go hunting, he doesn't shoot a deer.
Doesn't fit their mold.
Right? That's what? That's less than? Mm-hmm. Or he's not super into sports, so he's less than. That those behaviors that, I think I'm talking about two different things, and I'm really figuring this out as we're talking today, but I think I'm talking about two different things. One is their version of what a male or a female should be, right? There's that. So they're judging him on that. Mm-hmm. There's the other that is that, yes, Josh has some what I call quirky behaviors. Some needs that are different than what the other kids in the family were showing when they were growing up. Mm-hmm. And for me, it wasn't like, you don't get a kid with autism and just go, yes, of course, I know exactly what to do. It's mm-hmm. not how it goes. I mm-hmm. needed to be educated, and I needed to gain understanding of why would Josh screech the way he did. why he wasn't talking yet, but he would screech about everything. What did that mean? What did he need? Why was that happening? And I wouldn't mean too much to me because you were a recruiter, a Navy recruiter. We lived in a little town of Marianna in Florida, away from all family. He's my first kid. I just thought they all screeched like that. I didn't know. But then when my brother and sister-in-law come in to visit and they have their kids, 2 boys and a girl, and I'm looking, I'm going, oh, they're not screeching.
Mm-hmm.
It's different.
And they're the same age, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. And my brother and sister-in-law never missed a beat with Josh. Mm-hmm. It was like you treat anybody else, and it was wonderful. It was what I thought would happen. Once it got the diagnosis, then pieces kind of made sense. It's not like you go, yay, he's got autism, but it's like, oh, we have answers.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be the answers that I wanted, but it's just, you kind of have some guidelines then, and you kind of can get some help. I think the thing that I really wanted to talk about today is that how members of our own family judge Josh in a way that's very harsh and very mean and unacceptable, and they treat him less than, and they look at him like there's something wrong with him. Mm-hmm. And by association, because we're his parents, there's something wrong with us. Mm-hmm. And oh, poor parents to have to deal with Josh. And what that does for me, and we set kind of the parameters for this podcast a long time ago where I have to watch my mouth. And it's there's an awful a lot not being said in this podcast, because if I truly expressed myself, it would be a lot of profanity.
Very descriptive.
Very descriptive, because it infuriates me that the very people that are family, and I guess my expectation is you look at your grandparents as people that are going to love you.
When all this started, when we found out what was going on, we gave everybody all this information that things are different. It's not...
This is why he does this. Before we went into that, we didn't know why he did something.
Right.
And now we have an answer.
Right.
So, everybody, if plans change, please give advance notice if possible. Things like that,
yeah.
Right?
So all the information was passed on. And this included my dad, and others in our family that still are critical of things that he does that they don't like, they don't fit their mold. And it seems like it doesn't matter how much we say stuff. And for the listeners out there, I'm sure that you found the same thing, that it doesn't matter how many times you say stuff. There are some people that just don't get it. And they don't...
They don't even try to get it.
They don't even try to get it. They don't...
Because in their mind, in our case, it's Josh. Mm-hmm. But in other families, it's their children. But it's... Right. In our family, they don't even try to understand Josh. Right. He's just less than to them. Mm-hmm. It's just that simple. He's less than.
It was very aggravating.
It's infuriating.
Yes.
You get aggravated. I get infuriated.
Well, I'm
with
mad.
A capital P.
I'm mad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not...
With a capital P.
It's just not okay.
Right.
It's not, in my world, it's not how you treat other people, but it's certainly not how you treat family. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's generational or not. There's been things that Nana and Pappy don't understand about Josh, and he can feel You know how we've talked before about how sometimes it could be interpreted that Josh is lazy when, and that there's part of that could be true. There's also part of it that there are times that he needs the separation from everybody, so that he can de-escalate himself.
Right.
Because he's feeling everything, it's too much.
Right.
So when he separates himself and he's not out there doing something, that doesn't mean he's lazy every time. It means he just needs that space.
Right.
And I don't know if we've done it right. I don't know if we've, I am totally open to this, that maybe I've given Josh too much leeway. Maybe I give him too much, too many ways to escape, or maybe I support him too much in that he doesn't have to step up more because he knows he's got a soft place to land. I don't know. Maybe it's true. I don't care because I just did it the best I could do.
Right.
I didn't know how to do it any different.
Sure.
And for family members to, your dad just saying this, and I'm saying he did it the last week when he talked to Bug. It makes me so angry. I don't know what I expected for him to be better to his grandkids than he is to you, but it's just that mentality of Josh is not enough. That keeps coming at me, at us, and it's just so upsetting. We've had to deal with cousins, aunts and uncles that also had the same approach to Josh, and I am not talking about my brother's kids, because they love Josh and take him for who he is.
Right.
Yeah, this is who he is, and they just accept that, and that's good for them.
Right.
But there are some relatives that we would go and see at family reunions and what have you, and they were just pretty rude. They were unaccepting of him. They would bring up, why can't he do this? Why can't he do that? And then there were others. I have a couple of my cousins. It's Peggy and Melba. They have both come to me and seriously talked about Josh and what he needs and how he's doing, and
Trying to help.
And first trying to understand, and then would follow through on that and alter their own behavior to help him to be okay.
Right.
So, yes, but there's other cousins that are, they're Josh's second cousins, because they're my first cousins, so they're his second cousins, that really just don't even have any tolerance. If he's not into football, whatever, then he's less than.
Right.
I mean, that's simplistic. I don't mean it like that, because it's not just about football. It's about when Josh's differences show up, they look at him in disgust, and they look at us.
Yeah, and it's not, it's not about keeping him from participating, because they'll let him participate in things. Like, for example, when we were talking about down in when you just mentioned the family reunion, you'd go out and play basketball with them. But if something came up, they would immediately, their ugliness showed up.
Because, of course, Josh would have to have things a certain way, and you would have to follow the rules. So it was an indoor basketball court inside the building where we always have the reunion, which, by the way, my dad helped build that building when he was alive. And so there's a basketball court inside. And so when the rules were set out and then the other kids were not following the rules, Josh would get upset. I get it. His behavior is different. It's not something that they're used to. I'm accustomed to the strange stares. I get that.
Right.
I understand that Josh's behavior is not something that a lot of people are accustomed to, when he was growing up. And I was used to that. What I have never gotten used to is our own particular people in our own family that feel very comfortable with such judgment about who he is, and then that immediately translates to how we must be so disappointed in him for being who he is. And what...
Well, I want to go on the record and say I am not disappointed in Josh at all.
Yeah. Me either. Look, I will say this. Josh is the biggest pain in the butt I've ever had.
Right.
In my life. Right? It's complicated. Mm-hmm. It is so much work. Mm-hmm. Remember, voted most likely to leave my kid in the grocery store. I'm the one that's asked. Yeah, you can't just, you got to be a super mom because you got to figure out all kinds of stuff that you have no knowledge of. Right. Yes. But disappointed in him, not even for a second. Not even for a second. Disappointed in family members. Your dad, that is a grown man, and I just think, who is he to say things like that to Josh's sister in a derogatory way? Even bigger than that, it just reflects how he feels. And so that's what we deal with, is these family members that have this idea of how a person's supposed to be. And here comes Josh, and like you said it perfect, he doesn't fit their mold, and so that he's less than. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, I guess I thought that family members should step up. And I thought family members would be kind-hearted because, for goodness sakes, this is your relative. This is a kind, decent human. And you're being the opposite by judging the way that you are.
And, as far as I'm concerned, I think that I kind of expect that in the world, mm-hmm. with all the way that people react to different things. But in your family, and especially for the ones that you continue to go out and say, that's not the way that it is, and give explanations, give understanding, teaching, whatever it is, I don't need them around. I don't need their comments, and if they want to continue their comments, they don't need to be in part of this, So that's how I feel.
Well, I think, too, that was a breaking point, finally, in that you're saying, you're not welcome. Mm-hmm. You're not welcome here anymore because of the way that you treat our son. Mm-hmm. And it's abhorrent, and he should be ashamed of himself. Mm-hmm. And like I said, at 50, and maybe you, too, like you just get to an age, right? You're just like, I don't need to...
I'm still in my 20s, so...
Yes, so you in your 20s and me in my 50s.
Years.
Yes. It just gets to a point, too. And, and I look back and I go, why, there were some things that I just put up with, but I just didn't know how to handle it. Mm-hmm. Because it's just this very strange thing, this situation where when Josh needed some... he needed to be... His needs were different than other kids. Mm-hmm. And I was learning what he needed as we went along. Mm-hmm. And so, for me, kind of being in that stage of not totally having both feet on the ground, because, look, I'm young, I'm still learning to express myself, and to stand up for myself, and then people coming at Josh, I would turn into Mama Bear. I wouldn't put up with a lot. I would turn into Mama Bear.
Sure.
But there's something that happened when it came from family members that made me just kind of go, like, I really wouldn't know what to say because I was so shocked that it was happening, and appalled that it was happening. I guess I'm just surprised that it's still happening.
Yeah.
And so what's happening now at this point is we're saying you can't be in our lives anymore. We don't want you in our lives anymore because Josh is far more important to us than you are.
We've had enough.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, how long can you continue to say, no, you're wrong? And you know, we don't need those comments, and he doesn't need that. Because regardless, you know he's very perceptive.
Yes.
And can you imagine seeing something like that, and it's about you, and it's coming from your grandfather or some other family member?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how hurtful is that?
Right. Right. And I'll say this, that when Josh was young, there were times when I said, it's like, well, he would be in a situation, and because I would just kind of joke about it and go, like, well, good thing he's oblivious. Because,
Right.
because that would have hurt, but he's oblivious, so thank goodness. Well, through all the therapies, a downside to that is he's not so oblivious anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets it, and he feels it, and he hears the thing that is just the truth that I know. And that is that autism has a spectrum, but there's also a spectrum of how you are as a human, right? Like the vibration is this low, heavy vibration, or this high, fine vibration. And one is uncomfortable, and the other one is love. And Josh on the spectrum of, in that context, he is absolutely the highest, finest vibration, and he is love.
Right.
And so, when I go and I look at, in this situation, because we're talking about your dad, predominantly, but it's easy to go, yeah, there's a spectrum, and Josh is on this high end of this spectrum of humanity, right? And your dad,
What is he?
like, he's on the other end of the spectrum, but I just want to go kick him off and just go, you can't, what I'm saying is that there's this decency that Josh holds. There's this kindness that is Josh.
And what gets me is that some of the stuff that is done, it looks like it's actually tried to be portrayed out of malice. So there's no malice. But it's hurtful, and it's you're right. Josh is love on that scale, but
yeah. So I think you're saying without malice. I'm you lost me a little bit there, because when somebody has just such a strong belief about somebody else and about a situation, and they're not willing to ever take in any new information, they're not willing to see things from a different point of view, they're not even willing to be open to it. And I'm talking about this. When you sit around and you play board games, which is what happens every time that we're around your dad, and the family, then, Josh would be pointed out as something that was less than. It's just like it doesn't stop. And so when you say lack of malice, I think what you're talking about is, would somebody else in the family say something maybe hurtful without putting much thought into it, and then didn't really mean to hurt anybody, and it's a learning experience,
but
right?
Their ugliness shows regardless, and that's what's happening. I sometimes I don't think that they think about it. like, for example, my dad, I don't think he thinks about it. He just has his opinion, he says it. And it's like, you know what? Shut up. It's
Right.
not, that's not nice. It's not called for. It's
It's
not
not true.
It's not true.
Right.
And it needs to stop. And
it won't stop, and it hasn't stopped, and that's why we don't need him around.
right,
Josh doesn't need him around.
right.
Because I'm going to tell you what, I am still that mama bear.
Mm-hmm.
I am still that mama bear, and I don't need anybody. If I can, I can do my very best, and you can do your very best. But my goodness, at this point in time, for him to still have that mentality, Josh is not the one with a disability in this scenario. It's your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? If somebody doesn't want to get help and they refuse to see what's right in front of them, then there's nothing that we can do except to say, yeah, you don't fit into
Our lives.
anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no space for that. There's no room, because how do you keep on having somebody that's hurtful around?
It's so hard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, this is something that I wanted to talk to you about, and I didn't want Josh to hear it, because, I mean, he's smart. I don't think he realizes that he's held in that viewpoint by certain family members.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he is, and I don't want him to know.
No.
It doesn't help him at all to know that. It helps me to, along with you, to say, you know what? We don't need you in our lives anymore. We're standing up for our son. He's more important to us, and it's not okay. As long as you have that mentality, you're not welcome here anymore. So that's where we are. And it's just still kind of shocking, I think,
Yeah.
to me, that it still continues. I mean, Josh is 33. Wouldn't you think people that we've told over and over and over that they would see him for who he truly is and not for some quirky behaviors?
I agree. 100%.
Yep.
100%. You know, I've seen things out in town where there'll be someone with maybe their caregiver, their family, somebody, and they're acting out because that's what they can do, that they can't do better. That's how they respond to things.
You know what I do when I walk by them? I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, go on.
I tell them, I verbalize it. I say, "You're doing great, Mama."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I just,
Yep.
you know.
And when I see that, I understand,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because I can see it. I can see what's happening, and I know what's transpiring, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a difficulty there. I understand that. And then you see other people that respond, and they're like, you know, do you see that person over there? How, you know, and
Yeah.
I kind of expect that, but not from my family.
Yeah.
And I'm done. I'm done with it. I'm not going to put up with it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have someone that you know that does this, and
That is judgmental.
That's judgmental. And we're not saying that this is the way that you can go to it to handle it, but this is what the best thing that we can come up with, because we can't continue to
For it to
put
have
up
that
with
hatefulness.
this. No.
It just comes at us in this hatefulness. And the other thing,
Mm-hmm.
you make a good point, Dave, the people that are listening, is what I think happens is that we all know that when you have a child with autism, not only are you fighting for them to get the care that they need and for them to be treated with respect and decency. But you know what? All of a sudden, because we're a parent of somebody with autism, now they come at us with judgment too.
Right.
And that's something that I guess I will never get accustomed to. It's like we are sometimes viewed as less than just because we're Josh's parents. And what makes me so mad at that is just the lack of decency.
Right.
But what makes me so mad is because people don't even know him. What they see is the quirkiness. They see this difficulty maneuvering through situations. And then we come in and we're human and we didn't go to school for this. So, we don't know how to handle it exactly, and we're doing the best that we can. But then now those people decide to judge us and dump on us and decide how we should be feeling because of Josh. When they don't even have a clue
Right.
that he is the kindest human that I have ever met.
Right. I agree.
And there it is. And I don't have anything else to say about this subject, do you?
I love Josh, and I'm going to protect him whatever I need to do. I mean, he makes me crazy sometimes. But,
Yes.
Yeah. Who else is going to stand up for him
If not us.
if not us?
Yeah. Yeah. And, right. And it just got to a point now that, unfortunately, we have to protect him from some of our own family members.
Yeah.
That just won't let up, just won't grow up, and won't see any other perspective.
Yep.
Yeah. So there you go.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, and this is what the topic is today, and that I could be here and voice some of my opinion about it.
Yeah, cool. Glad you're hanging out with me. So anyways, everybody, thank you so much. Please let us know if you've had this experience, because we want to hear how you handle it. Because even though we're saying we just made a decision, we've dealt with it, but there's still more family members that are coming at us this way. I'm like, how are you handling it? What are you doing? And
maybe there's a better way.
Yeah, maybe we haven't found it.
Right.
But anyway, if you would, please give us 5 stars, because we appreciate that. It helps us to be seen. Check out our website at sonyaking.com. It's SONYKING.com. And send us messages. Let us know what's going on with you. We appreciate you so much. We hope that you're healthy and happy.
Yes, we do.
We'll talk to you next week. Love you.
Yeah.